My name is, that's very tall. And that was designed by a man, wasn't it? My name is Lori Baker, and I'm an alcoholic. My home group is the Friday Night Reality Group in Phoenix, Arizona. My sobriety date is November 19th, 1990. Thank you. Last fall, I was invited to the Reno group to be their Sunday morning spiritual speaker. So I was very honored to do this. And I felt while I was there that it would be very important for me to make sure that I went to all the other speaker meetings. Now, I have been in Al-Anon meetings before, and I have heard, kind of, Al-Anon speakers. I have little flaps inside my ears that used to close off. So that Saturday night, the Al-Anon speaker was speaking first, and then the AA speaker, so there was really no place for me to go but right there. And I was in the front, and so I sat there and I was paying attention, and it was the first time that I actually heard an Al-Anon speaker with my heart. I hope that you have at least half the effect that I had that night when I heard her in Reno. It is a privilege and an honor for me to introduce to you my friend and my partner, Kerri.
Hi, I'm Kerri. Breathing is good. Before I get started, I want to thank Tom and the committee for asking me to come and share tonight. It's an honor and a privilege always to come and share my story of recovery. That light is bright. My heart's going to slow down in a second. We're going to sink into this. If his hands start smoking when I get really wound up, if somebody in the front row would yell at me, I'll try and slow down. It could happen. Joyce, I related so much last night with what you had to say. I'm a member of Al-Anon because I've been affected by another person's alcoholism, and I happen to love an alcoholic. I was raised in Mississippi, 7 miles west of Sledge, Mississippi, on a 500-acre cotton and soybean farm. When I was 12 years old, we got a telephone in our community, and they did pave our roads when I was about 10. I tell you this because it's important to understand there wasn't a lot of information coming in or going out of where I lived. We're kind of set in our ways down there. I was the firstborn, and what time is it? 8:30, okay. I was the firstborn. My father wanted a son. I was not one, clearly, but he raised me like one. It was okay with him until I took it a little bit farther than he wanted later on. Then he got irritated with it. At any rate, there was no active alcoholism in my family growing up. There is alcoholism all throughout my family tree. It's important for me to say this up here because I was in program for probably about 3 years until I started to understand how I had been affected by alcoholism from very early on. May 17th, I will have been a member of Al-Anon for 13 years. Thank you. I got here because I started dating a sober alcoholic. I thought that was a step up. She was pretty crazy. But I want to thank her from the podium. I don't know if she's sober today. I don't know if she's alive. It really doesn't matter. She was my Eskimo. She got me here, and I will forever be grateful to that person. Growing up in Mississippi, Southern families, my experience with Southern families were that they were quite codependent, and we didn't talk a lot about our feelings, and you always had to appear that everything was okay and be quiet and everything was wonderful and good, and you were taught by guilt and manipulation. And my father actually told me when I was little that I needed to be a good child so that people would know that he was a good father. I am a direct reflection of my father. Well, my father was my higher power. When I was 7 years old, my parents divorced, and my mother left, and I felt as a 7-year-old that, not knowing any better, that something I had done had caused her to leave. And a part of me just broke, I think, at that point. Well, no, I'm not broken. It cracked. So my father remarried to a woman who I didn't know at the time, but she was an adult child of an alcoholic. The father had been the alcoholic in her life, and he had just beaten her to death half her life. Well, she was very intimidated by my relationship with my father, and early on she let me know that I was not going to come between them. He kind of set me up. The day that he married her, he told her that nothing would come between him and his 2 children that he already had. Well, if he'd have said that to a healthy person, it probably wouldn't have been a big deal. But she was an adult child of an alcoholic, and she was, I think, what I need to say here tonight is that All the things I talk about are strictly my opinion and my recovery. I'm here to talk about my experience, strength, and hope. And if you don't agree with me, that's perfectly fine. Healthy people don't have to agree with each other. That's all right. I'm going to talk about a lot of things. I'm going to talk about the Big Book, and I could be shot in some Al-Anon meetings for that, but that's just my recovery. And I have to tell you what worked for me. Thanks. Years old. And I had to keep it secret. She told me if I didn't, that it would be worse after he left. I didn't know that her father used to beat her and lock her in closets, but I want you to see how alcoholism has stepped down my tree. Nobody was drinking right around me. My grandmother helped to raise me, and we lived in a small farming community, and she was very prestigious. She was the matriarch of the whole area, not just our family, the whole area. And she was I can't think of a better candidate for Al-Anon than my grandmother. She had a brother who was an alcoholic, and her husband's brother was an alcoholic, and she had a full-time job keeping those two guys sober, And I got to watch that, and I saw how she appeared to have a lot of power over people, and I learned, and I watched, and I learned, and I wasn't given the ability to have, no one wanted me to have my own feelings. I learned quickly to decide what you wanted me to feel, and that's how I appeared. I was a chameleon. Anybody here relate to that? Okay, so I'm getting a lot of abuse at home, and I'm smart. I was a very smart kid, and I learned that the quickest way for that to be over was for me not to resist. So I'm learning how to keep secrets. I'm learning to shut my feelings down. I'm learning to appear like everything's okay. This is what's happening in my childhood. My father doesn't want to know about this stuff, so I got to keep on a happy face so everybody's happy, so we all look like everything's cool. Well, when I was about 12 years old, my stepbrother, my stepmother's son, who was a couple years older than me, he raped me, and that actually was like 2 hours after I lost my virginity. We didn't have a lot to do down south, so we started things really young. But he raped me right after I lost my virginity, which is traumatic in and of itself, but because I had been with a guy that my father didn't approve of, I was afraid to tell. I couldn't discern at that age what was the worst of the two evils at that point. So what I did from that point on for the next year and a half was I would either go to sleep really early before my parents did so I'd feel safe, or I'd lie awake till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning afraid that he was going to come into my room. Well, that didn't happen again. It happened again I was about 13 and a half, I guess. At that point, I did tell. And my father, at that point, my stepbrother had moved out. My father was going to go over to his house, and my stepmother said, "Oh, don't go, you'll kill him." So she came back and said he looked drunk and said he didn't know what you're talking about. He didn't have anything to drink that night, but it didn't matter. For 24 hours, I got to have my feelings about that, and then I was told that it was over to move on. That shouldn't happen to children. I had to put that behind me already. And so quickly, I didn't even have time to know what had happened. At any rate, when I was very young, I knew that there was something different about me than those other little girls that I was playing with. I did not know exactly what that was because I'm out here with no telephones, no paved roads, no nothing. I don't know there's another person in the world that looks at girls like I look at girls. So I have this feeling that there's something different, but I'm not sure. And I kind of had it a little more. When I was 12 years old, my father set me down and said, "There's 3 things that you can do, Kerri, that I will disown you for. Steal, love a black, or love a woman." I just really wish I had stolen my first girl from somebody and she had been black. She wasn't. Pardon me. Came time to go to college, my father said, "You got to get a scholarship because I can't afford to pay." Well, I was a stellar student. I was a star child. I made straight A's. I played softball. I wanted a softball scholarship to college, and they didn't give very good softball scholarships, so I resorted to that 4-year renewable academic scholarship they would give me. I was pissed, okay, because it wasn't the softball scholarship. My priorities are a little mixed up. But I was at school. I went to this women's college down in southern Mississippi where I'd heard there were some queers down there. And this was a good idea, I didn't think anybody else in the world was like this. So I'm at school for probably about a month, and I meet a woman, and we went out one night. We had sex that night, and we were together for the next 3 years. It was pretty crazy. I loved it. I couldn't get enough. I moved to California right after I graduated college. I was in my second relationship at this point. I have to say here that I was basically in the same relationship for 10 years, but the faces just kept getting different. I was in that relationship, the second one, when I moved to California with this girl, and we were there for a while, and, I did what was modeled for me to do, and I felt like I needed to be in a relationship all the time. I didn't know much about communicating with people. I didn't know much about having feelings. I didn't know much about anything. I knew that I was way far away from my family, and I wasn't really sure why I was there, except the fact that one of my grandmothers and my stepmother had died within 2 weeks of each other, and I didn't realize that God was doing for me what I couldn't do for myself at that point. And God got me from Mississippi to California, I think, in a way to start my recovery. Well, I met someone that I kind of liked, and, I never would want to be unfaithful to someone, so I walked into my lover. At that point, been together about 2 years, and I said, I like somebody else, and I'm not going to go out on you, and I want to date somebody else, so I'm breaking up. And I thought that was, a really forthright way to be. Well, I've learned in my recovery that bludgeoning people with the truth is not always how I need to go about stuff, So I got with this, in a couple more relationships. I find myself with a woman who's doing a lot of cocaine. Now, granted, you got to think about the fact that coming from this place in Mississippi, I moved to Los Angeles. We had to drive 2 hours to get to a gay bar when I was growing up. And I moved to Los Angeles. They got a parade, a newspaper. You got West Hollywood. You can walk down the street and hold hands with your partner. They shoot you for this stuff where I grew up. Well, I was in culture shock out there. I couldn't take it all in. I mean, when I drove into Los Angeles, that freeway opened up in about 5 lanes, and I'm in my little brown Pinto. I almost had a heart attack. I mean, that's the truth. It was pretty wild. So I'm dating this woman who drinks a lot, and she does cocaine, and at that point, because I hadn't been around a lot of homosexuals, I was going into the bars a lot. I'm on my 3rd relationship by now, and that has gone sour, and I'm not sure why, and I'm working swing shifts, so I go to the bar when I get off every night. That's like the store. If any Al-Anons out there, I don't know if you can relate to that, because there's alcoholics at the bar, okay? And you go there and find what you need. So, I didn't know anything about alcoholism or addiction or anything like that. I was just going where the women were, And it was a watering hole. So I found this woman, and she was doing cocaine and drinking a lot. And then all of a sudden, it occurred to me that the cocaine and the alcohol were way more important than I was ever going to be. So I told her she needed to stop doing that, fully expecting that she would, As I said, I didn't know a thing about alcoholism. I know what I've learned today, that alcoholism is a family disease. And not only the drinker is affected, the people that are around the drinker are affected, the family, the friends, the people that the alcoholic loves the most are affected by this disease. Our minds get messed up. We don't even have the excuse of being able to drink something to get as crazy as we get, In a way, I think you guys are lucky, you got the bottle. But I left that relationship, and I became involved with the sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. 2 years sober in AA. I didn't know what AA was. I thought this was great. I'd just been with this woman who was drinking all the time, and so this woman's sober. I thought, well, all my problems are over. Wrong. Way wrong. We were crazy. I mean, she'd walk into a room and every head would turn and my heart would melt, and I could think that life couldn't get any better. I mean, it was just like I was addicted from the word go when I met that woman. We went out on our first date. We had sex together. I had sex on the first date for many of my marriages. I don't know about any of you. We had sex the first night we had a date, and we were together after that, and I was going to these meetings with her, and it was great, and this whole new cult-like thing, AA, y'all were all hugging each other, and alcoholics are great. I love alcoholics. You're just flamboyant, and, you love life, and you holler, and you cuss, and you drink coffee and smoke cigarettes at your meetings. Back then they did. I love that. So I'm sitting in meetings with her because, she has this problem, and I want to go and help her with her problem, or just be supportive of this problem that she has, because I suffer from the disease of being a good guy, okay? No matter what happened when I was out there before I got into recovery, I would position myself so that anybody who was on the outside looking in, they would think that it was what she had done, and she looked like a big old ass, and I looked stellar. I mean, it was just like, it was so amazing how I could do that. I don't even know how I could do it sometimes. It was wild. At any rate, she was pretty volatile. It was probably part of, initially I didn't know that she was volatile, but it got volatile and it got physically violent very fast. I believe that the universe allows me to recreate situations in my adult life that will help me heal from things in my childhood. That's only my opinion. Well, the next thing I knew, she was getting physically violent with me, and I was rolling up in a ball waiting for it to be over, which is exactly what I did when I was 10 and 12 years old. I never hit back. Never hit back. I didn't when I was young. I just waited for it to be over. If I didn't resist, it would stop soon, and that's what I did. And it got so crazy. I can't even tell you how crazy it got. I mean, fists through windows. When we were living in Burbank, driving up an on-ramp in Burbank, California one afternoon. She had run down to my work. She was about to turn 2 in AA. She'd get kind of wild around her birthdays, and I've heard that some of you people do that. I don't know. I just talk about myself up here, but that was my experience of what happened with her. And we're driving up onto the freeway, and we're having this fight. I don't even know what it's about. Actually, I don't think it was a fight. We were just talking, and I'm driving, and all of a sudden she hits me, and my head ricochets off the window. And I stop in the middle of the afternoon, jump out of the car. Now, God is working in my life all through my life, and some of the miracles that I see is, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Burbank, California. I'm jumping out of a vehicle on an on-ramp onto a freeway in Burbank, and no one is behind me. You think God wasn't there with me that day? I mean, imagine that happening. At any rate, I jump out. I don't want to get back in the car. We get back in the car. We do that insane dance, that alcoholic dance. We get home. She won't get out of the truck. I'm trying to go back to work, and I think, well, screw it. I'll just get out and walk that mile back to work. She ran it 15 minutes ago, So I get out of the car, and I start to walk, and I hear this noise, and I turn around, and she had hit the windshield from the inside and just spiderwebbed the whole thing. Angry. A lot of anger. Couldn't get out. Healthy person would have said, I think I need to leave. I said, wow, I think I can help her. This is the insanity of the effects of alcoholism on my thinking, people. Nothing I was ever going to do was going to help this woman, but I didn't know it. I truly thought that I could make a difference if I said the right thing. We've been dating 3 weeks, and we're riding around in her car, and I opened up the glove box, and there was 97 parking tickets in there. I went to work and took out a loan and paid those, $1,000. I could make it better. You would love me if I did the right things. I didn't love myself. I didn't know who I was. What I had learned was I'm an extension of somebody else. So if I've got this, awesome package on my arm, then I must be styling. That's what I learned. That's what my father told me when I was little. You're an extension of me. So I'm walking around trying to get something from outside to fix this huge gaping hole inside of me that was never going to happen, but I didn't know it yet. Well, this woman had a wonderful sponsor in AA, and the sponsor suggested to her that I go to Al-Anon. Al-Anon. I like going to AA with her. I'm very glad that I went to a lot of open AA meetings with her because I learned a lot about the Big Book. I listened when they read We Agnostics. I listened when it talked about lack of power is our dilemma. We had to find a power greater than ourselves that would solve our problem. That was great for y'all. I was really happy for you. I didn't know I had a problem at that point. At any rate, I went to Al-Anon. I'll never forget my first Al-Anon meeting. She went upstairs to an AA meeting, and I went downstairs to the Al-Anon meeting. Now, I've been going to these open AA meetings, so you know what I'm accustomed to. I walk into this room, and there's about 20 women sitting around in a circle, Kleenex boxes in the middle of the floor. They're crying and talking about their feelings, how they feel abandoned, how they feel sad, and all this stuff. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I don't belong here. And so I go back upstairs. I'm like, honey, I'm not going there. I'll just come here with you, I mean, I can't stand to being down there. When I got here, I had 2 feelings, okay and fine. That's how I was. How you doing? Okay, great, fine. I wouldn't have known an angry feeling if it hit me over the head. Oh, God, I'm going to get into a little recovery here now. I made a trip back to Mississippi probably about 8 months after that woman and I had been together. And I came out to my family. And remember what my father told me when I was 12. Well, he was true to his word. I just got back to L.A. good, and I got a message on my answering machine saying that it was my father. He said that he disowned me. He said that I knew that he couldn't handle this and that I had always known it, and that when I was right, he would go to bat for me, but when I was wrong, he couldn't have anything to do with it. And as far as he was concerned, I was dead and buried and no longer existed. I did not know that he had called the entire family, including the little children, together to tell them all this and to tell them not to speak my name in his presence. This was hard. This man had been my God. He had been my higher power. Well, simultaneous to that happening, I had a feeling that my lover was having an affair with our mutual best friend. And that was confirmed. And that was my bottom. We had another roommate who had been in a treatment program for the C word, the Al-Anonism, codependency. And when I found out that she was having, it was confirmed by our other roommate that she was having that affair. And something inside me, the part that got cracked when I was young, I felt just completely broke. And I never in my life have felt like taking the life that God has so graciously given me until that moment. And I said to my roommates, if I don't get some help, I'm going to do something really bad. Really bad. And I was lucky enough to get into that treatment program. And when I share, I always want to make sure and share, I get very passionate about the depths to which this side of the disease can take us. You know, alcoholics go out and they drink and they stay out and they die, and you don't hear so much about Al-Anon going out and dying. We go quietly insane a lot of the times. But if you look around at some of the really sick situations that Al-Anons are in, they do die a lot of times. We have a spiritual sickness just as well. We suffer from the same disease. It's just from the flip side of it. I got into this program, and in 21 days, they figuratively pulled out every inch of my intestines and said, here's all the dysfunction. This is what was happening. You were abused. You were physically and mentally and emotionally abused. You were sexually abused. You were raped. All this stuff was freaking me out because I could never put names to it because you didn't talk about this stuff. All the secrets I had kept for, like 24 years were bottled up inside of me. And I had spent my whole life trying to not let anybody know about these things, and in like 3 weeks, they just were drawing pictures on paper and putting it out there, and everybody that was in there with me was seeing what they were talking about. And it kind of messed with my entire mode of thinking. My whole belief system was shattered. And they said to me, Kerri, you got to leave this hospital now. You understand what's wrong with you. And Kerri, you need to go to the 12-step program of Al-Anon because you don't know how to have relationships. You don't know how to be healthy. And this is probably the only thing that's going to save you. Well, you know that meeting that I went to that I turned my nose up to and ran out of? I crawled back into that meeting almost 13 years ago. And I said, you people got to help me or I'm going to die. And I'd been sitting in those open AA meetings for so long, I thought, well, they tell people who are newly sober that they need to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I bet I could do that. And in LA, I could do that. And I did that. I did 90 meetings in 90 days, and I looked for a sponsor, and I didn't think it was really going to work, but I was so broken inside, I could hardly get through a whole day of work without crying. And I didn't want to lose my job, and I didn't want to lose my life, but I didn't know where to turn, so I had to come to you people. I did not leave that relationship, which is what they told me I needed to do. I hated that. I went to another program one time, and they told me I needed to leave that program, that I needed to leave that relationship, and so I left that program because they weren't giving me a choice. No one in Al-Anon has ever said to me that I needed to leave a relationship. They have said, if you ever need to leave, you will know. Your higher power will let you know. People in the rooms of Al-Anon have taught me that I have a choice, that I have dignity, that I am a lovable child of God. I didn't know that before I got here. Nobody in my life was about helping me know that before I got here. But the people in the rooms of Al-Anon have helped me learn that. They said, I hate those stupid cliches. Let us love you until you can learn to love yourself. Yeah, right. That's what I thought in the beginning. It's true. I didn't know anything about love, and that's why I didn't want to hear it in the beginning. I would sit in the meetings, and back at that point, the meetings were like an hour and a half, and I would sit there, and I'd be so wound up thinking about, was she going to be waiting outside for me when the meeting was over to beat my brains out, And not granted, I was a huge playing the victim here. I instigated this stuff. I can't make it like it's all about her. My craziness was starting it too. We would do the hang up, call back up 115 times, I would do things to make her that crazy. Did I think I was? I was so in denial, I had no idea that was going on. And I was so in denial that when I would move out in the middle of the night while she was off working after we'd had a fight, I would think, a healthy person would probably think I'm never going back. I might not get out this time. I thought, well, maybe if I stay away I was reading this last week, an old diary of mine, Lori, an entry into it, and it was one of those times when I had moved out, and because it had been violent, and I thought, well, maybe I should stay away like a month this time. Hello, a month's gonna fix it, yeah. One time, that's the time we separated when it was so crazy. We went to couples counseling, and I figured we talked about it, and it was okay. And after about a month, we decided maybe we need to get a bigger apartment, and it'd be all right. Well, we had another roommate. Her nickname was Keizo. Ooh, wow, that was not cool. Anyways, I don't know what her name was, but so we had another roommate. We had another roommate, and this is how crazy our household was. And she was a slasher, and I would come home and step over her, having tried to kill herself just to go in so we could raise Cain back in the bedroom, and we're all in recovery. Nobody's drinking in our house, okay? It doesn't stop just because you get here. I want people to know that's how crazy it can be, because, I lead a wonderfully serene life today. I feel that I'm like 110 light years away from where I used to be, but it is incredibly important for me to never, ever forget where I came from, ever, because I don't want to go back. And if I don't come here and take my medicine with you people, I could go back. I could. So I get a sponsor, I'm in these meetings, I start working the steps, and I knew that I was powerless, and it didn't take too long for me to be beaten into submission, that I really was powerless over alcohol. At first, I thought you people could help me find the answer and make her stop doing all that stuff, but I learned pretty quickly that it wasn't about her, which really pissed me off, that I was here for me and not her. So I started doing the second step, and this whole concept of God. I was raised Southern Baptist, and that was a God who hated people like me, and I was dead from the gate, and I didn't know why to even bother with a God. I was going to burn in hell anyway, so what was the point? So I couldn't change who I was. But what a novel idea you people had. You told me God could be anything I wanted it to be. A tree, whatever. I know someone whose higher power is a tree, by the way. It works really well for him. She hangs her troubles on the tree before she goes into her house at night, and they're waiting on her in the morning when she gets up. I borrowed my first sponsor's higher power. I didn't think there was a God that would work for me, but I knew that something was working for her, and she said I could use her God, and I said, okay. So I did. That worked for me. The group was my higher power in the beginning, too. I couldn't wrap my mind around this God thing, And finally, I'm not sure how, other than the fact that I just kept coming back, I finally made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood God. And I got into a step group. My sponsor was running a step group, and we started working the steps. And I did my 4th step with her, did my 5th step, and 6 and 7. And what I often find when a lot of times for me, getting humble to ask God to take my defects, sometimes it takes me a while to get humble. Sometimes I got to be like bashing into that wall till I'm real bloody, figuratively, and stepping back and going, wow, help me, God. God says, take 1 step to the right and then go ahead, Kerri, you can do that. It's pretty funny. Not. So I did my 8th and 9th step, and when it was time to make my amends, and I was the first person on my amends list, and I didn't like that. My sponsor made me put my name there, and I didn't think that was right, but I couldn't tell her what to do because I was scared of her. She said that I had been neglecting myself my whole life, and I owed it to myself to learn how to love myself. Well, I missed the point where I broke up with that sober alcoholic. God did for me what I couldn't do for myself, and had her move about 50 miles away, and we finally broke up, but I didn't give it up easily, I got to tell you. It was like withdrawing from heroin for me. It was very difficult. Even when I was done, thought I was done several times, I wasn't done. I kept going back. And finally, I was finished. At that time, my sponsor said, what's your greatest fear, Kerri? I said, my greatest fear is being alone. If I'm alone, I'll die. That's what I thought. I couldn't be by myself. I'd been in a relationship basically for my entire adult life, well, for like 10 years, and I don't think my bed was even cold yet before I'd have another person in it, I couldn't stand what would start to happen to me, and I didn't know that it was feelings coming up because I didn't know I had feelings, but I just knew that something had to, I had to get somebody else in my bed there. So she said I probably was going to have to be alone in order to get better, and that was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire life, outside of calling the cops when the abuse happened for the last time that I suffered it. And I know that when I called the cops that night, I think that was probably what allowed me to never have to be in an abusive relationship again as long as I stay in this program, because something inside of me got it that night that I don't have to live that way anymore as long as I show up and do certain things. And you people tell me the things that I need to do when I don't know. Making amends to myself. I think for the rest of my life I'll be trying to make amends to myself. My father was on my list. I didn't want to put my father on my list because I wanted him to be a big behind for what he had done to me, because part of me still wanted to play the victim, my father won't have anything to do with me. How wrong is that? He won't accept me because of my sexuality. How wrong was I for judging him for judging me? And I had to work a long time to get to a place of compassion in my heart and ask God to really help me accept him for who he is, because he's being who he is. And if I want people to accept me for who I am, I need to try and accept him for who he is. And that was hard. I wrote a letter because I lived like clear across the country, and I sent it to him, and the letter came back. Oh, in the letter, I thanked him for, a myriad of things that he had done to raise me and be a wonderful father, because he had. I mean, he taught me how to chew a gum when I was 5 years old. He taught me how to drive. He taught me how to fish. He taught me how to do a lot of really cool things, And it wasn't all bad. And I thanked him for those things. Well, the letter came back, and I took that as a sign that he, was just being true to his word, that he didn't want to have anything to do with me. Well, I talked to him about a year after that, and I found out that something was wrong with our mail, and he never received the letter. I think that is hysterical. But I sent the letter back to him, and he did receive it, and we've yet to talk about it. And that's all right. I did my part. I love my father, but I think, in all honesty, the father that I knew died a long time ago. He's made it clear that he doesn't want to have anything to do with me unless I'm willing to marry men and have babies, and that just flat ain't going to happen in this lifetime. Step 10. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. I love 10 through 12. It helps me stay right, I do a daily 10-step today, and I promptly admit when I'm wrong today, because I don't want to come back to you and make amends later. It's purely a selfish thing on my part. I got out of that relationship. This is so funny. I went to college, and I'm smart. And I decided that the one thing that I had been doing right, the one constant in that 10-year time of that one relationship with different faces was me. So I was a big part of this problem. And I decided to look at this with my sponsor's help and figure out what went wrong. And part of it was that I was sexual with every one of these women before I knew who they were. Didn't know how to be intimate. Well, I thought that was being intimate, but see, my distorted thinking. Anyways, I decided that if I really liked somebody, I wouldn't kiss them for 30 days, and if I really, really liked them, I wouldn't have sex with them for 90 days. I didn't think I could do that now, but I developed this little plan with my sponsor. And if any of you out there ever had any kind of issues like I did, you might understand how hard that was. So I started dating these women. I didn't know anything about dating. Remember, I know about sleeping with you and being married and waking up about 3 months later and wanting to chew my arm off like Joyce was talking about last night. Bad. So I started dating these women, and what I started finding out was a lot of women, when they found out my rule after we'd been dating about a week, if they liked me and I wouldn't break my rule, they didn't want to date me anymore. Go figure. Well, I was attracting the same level that I was at, I mean, these were women that wanted to be about as healthy as I was, which wasn't very. So, but I stuck with my rule, and after a while, I really started seeing that what was happening was I was getting to have some feelings and understand that if I waited to be sexual with somebody before I got to know them, as I got to know them, that sometimes things would be revealed that would show me that maybe I didn't want to be sexual with this person. Wow, what a concept. Because I still like what they look like, but I didn't want to go to bed with them anymore, It kind of blew it for me. At any rate, I wound up getting into a relationship, and I wasn't sexual. I held by my rule, and that relationship was good. And I started learning, I started growing, and I'm still working the steps and going to meetings, and really involved in service work at this time. I was involved in AALA in the early 90s, and I had my posse. I surrounded myself with people in the program, and they became my buddies, and I started having this as my way of life. And I will always have this as my way of life because it's what worked for me. I've gone out there and I've done some research. I've kind of, lagged around the edges sometimes and not gone to many meetings, and my life starts to get kind of shaggy and it doesn't feel very good. And I've shown myself what works. I mean, if you don't know, my opinion is experiment with it. Prove it to yourself that it works or not. People in Al-Anon. You'll see. I mean, I hope you'll see. I certainly did. I can't do this on my own. I tell the people that I sponsor that the very first word in all of the 12 steps is the most important, we. A big part of my disease was isolation and thinking I could do it by myself and thinking that I was God and I could solve all your problems. Well, I can't even solve my problems. I got to get God to help me with my problems, and I know I can't do a thing in the world about yours. And that has saved me. I have such a freedom today because I don't try and fix you. I spent my whole life trying to fix you to get outside of myself when I first got here. At any rate, I was getting into healthier relationships, And things were going a lot better, and I was really finding out a lot about my feelings, and I have sought and still seek outside help, and it tells us in our literature that it's okay to do that. I needed it for a lot of the stuff that happened in my life. I needed professional help, and it's really helped me. I don't know how I could be this far in my recovery without the 12-step program of Al-Anon and without the help of therapy. Some people don't feel that way, and that's okay. This is just my opinion. Take what you like and leave the rest. So about 5 years ago, I got into a relationship with a woman in another 12-step program, and it was good. I mean, we were spiritual friends, just loved this woman to death. She happened to be straight, and we were literally just friends. And one day she said that she had murky feelings for me. Murky feelings. I went to college. Murky equals unclear. Oh, you're telling me you like me. Like that, you like me. Well, I didn't feel that way. Now, the way that my disease is cunning, baffling, and powerful is that, God has just so blessed me, is that I get to learn lessons today, and often I don't have to learn the hard way. Not as hard as I used to. I still get to learn the hard way sometimes, if I choose. Well, something that I found this out in hindsight. Don't think I knew this while I was going through it, because I didn't. I'm not the good guy anymore. I'm recovering from that, remember? So this person likes me, and I didn't like her in that way, but within a couple weeks, because she didn't want to be around me if I didn't want to be sexual with her, I convinced myself that since I had never, this was the first time that I was in a long-term relationship where I wasn't sexual first. I convinced myself that maybe loving her from my heart was the way that I should try to do this new healthy relationship thing. So I became involved with this woman, and I did love her, and sex was decent in the beginning. That's the truth. I have to tell the truth from up here. But because I was getting so much spiritual food and so much fulfillment in a heart level and emotional level that I never had before, my disease helped me shut down the fact that I was not getting a need met. I just let it go by the wayside, because I'm getting all this gold over here. So I don't know about it being okay. I'm learning about it being okay for all my needs to be met. I'm learning as a child of God, God wants abundance for me, that God really does want me to be happy, joyous, and free. Well, at that point, I'm still thinking, if I get 8 out of 10, I'm doing pretty good. I think this is a product of living in a dysfunctional family that's been affected by alcoholism. I'm always, in the early days, I was always waiting for that other shoe to drop. I was always certain that something bad was going to happen. It was just around the corner, and if I stayed wound up like a top, I might be ready for it to happen. It's a wonder I didn't have high blood pressure. Maybe I did, I don't know. But I'm breathing today. Don't forget to breathe. This is good. So we had a chance to move to Boulder. I was living in Los Angeles, and we had a chance to move to Boulder, Colorado, and we moved there, and things were good. And I started, getting involved in the Al-Anon community there, and she stopped going as much to her 12-step meetings. Well, it's cunning, baffling, and powerful, and I didn't know it was a problem at first. And then I'm getting more and more involved in the program, and she's getting less and less involved in hers, and her disease is very covert. It's not as black and white as drinking is or not. And I began to pull away. And, what I've learned in my time here is that I have to live my truth today, no matter what that means. Now, I can try and not be rude to people and not bludgeon them with the truth, and I try not to, because I want to be a loving, caring human being today. But things got really bad in that I felt like I wasn't getting a lot of my needs met. And really what happened, I was sitting in meditation one day, and another one of the hardest things I ever did was happening. I was asking God, because I'd been going back to therapy to find out what was wrong with me, because she told me something was wrong with me and I needed to go back to therapy. And so I'd been going back to therapy to find out what was wrong with me. I wasn't even getting a clue then, okay? It was not, I was the identified patient. That what was wrong was that I didn't want to be in a sexual relationship with her anymore. And I loved her with all my heart. And until that moment, I thought we would be together forever. I really did. I was that committed. I had been learning about commitment. I wasn't running away. And I'd been learning to be intimate and share and talk about my feelings and let my feelings be okay and all the stuff that I learned to do in recovery. And I got it that I didn't want to be in a sexual relationship with her anymore. This was kind of hard. We just moved into a brand new house. She had the worst year of her life. Her father died. She lost her job. The reason we moved to Boulder, and her cat was dying, and her uncle died, and all this bad stuff happened. I thought, oh great, I'm just going to walk in and say I need to leave. Well, I didn't want to do that. I love this person, but I had to do that. I had to say I can't do this anymore. And that hurt, and it broke my heart in a way. But because I knew I couldn't live there under a facade, I had to do it. And I knew that in doing that, my entire life was about to change because I wasn't going to have a place to live, because I knew I was going to have to leave. And just, we had been married, figuratively speaking. Well, God was right there. She told me I had to leave. I went and called someone in the program. They said, you can come and stay at my house. I called another friend. I said, I'm going to need a place to stay for a few months. She said, don't worry, you can come stay with us. I went to meetings, and the people in the program there just lifted me up. Well, I want to share a little bit about what happened when I moved to Boulder. In Los Angeles, I could go to all gay and lesbian meetings all the time. And I did. And I moved to Boulder, and they don't have gay and lesbian Al-Anon meetings. They have Al-Anon, just straight out Al-Anon. Kind of afraid at that point in my life to tell a lot of straight people about my sexuality, particularly the people in the rooms of the one place in my life that I finally felt like I belonged. Moving, to a new state, not knowing anybody, I want to go and I want to get this thing, I want to get the gift, I want to start getting this service and do this, but I'm afraid to let these people know who I am. Finally, I made a couple friends, and I kind of slinked around the edges of the room and came out to a couple people, and no one ran screaming out the hallway. And I signed up to do a speaker meeting, and I shared, and I didn't change any pronouns, and everybody was okay with it. And everybody there embraces me with open arms. And Boulder has been a wonderful place for me because I've learned that just because I happen to be a lesbian, it doesn't mean that I'm bad. I didn't know that deeply until I got there. What a blessing God gave me was to put me at a place where I couldn't hide anymore. I like what Joyce had to say about if you're only going to gay and lesbian meetings, you're missing out. I would agree with that. I've grown a lot from going into mainstream Al-Anon, and I wasn't able to hide anymore, I had to come out. I had to show who I was. I had to let these people see me, and I had to share with them, and I had to cry with them. And I've made friends in Boulder that I wouldn't even think about being friends with these people if it hadn't been for the rooms of Al-Anon. My life was just very rich there. So I left that relationship, and I decided I was going to be single for a while, and I was going to go back to my 30-90 rule. This is like 10 years after I made this rule. Well, I was single for many months, going through, looking, doing inventories and being of service and doing what I needed to do to get right with me and know that it's okay to be alone. I finally got okay being by myself and learning to love myself, and was really happy by myself. And I started having this outline of what I thought a perfect partner would look like. And there's a lot of things that I won't settle for in my life today. I know that I can't be with someone who drinks actively, or I can't be with anybody who's not in some sort of recovery. I don't know that it'd have to be someone in a 12-step program, but they have to be seeking some form of awareness or doing some form of introspection. And I started trying to date. I mean, there weren't a lot of women that I wanted to be with. I guess I'm just too picky, but Denver, it's a big city, but there weren't a lot of women there. I tried to meet a lot of women, and I would go out with them, and if they weren't in some form of recovery that I could relate to, I just really didn't want to have anything to do with them, and since I didn't want to have sex with them first anymore, it really cut the number way down, A lot of women still out there doing that, folks, if you haven't noticed. And so I'm just going on about my business, one of the things I need to share is because, I had such a internalized homophobia. God, as I said, God is really good to me. And God had me as a way to help me grow through a lot of my internalized homophobia. God saw fit to have me go and speak at these large, straight Al-Anon state assemblies for the state of Colorado. Here I'm standing up in front of this many people from the podium, and I got to share my story. And these are cowboys with dung on their boots and spitting their tobacco and everything else. It scared the daylights out of me. But I got up there and I told my story, and I know that if I can do that and still belong, I earned my seat here. I earned it. But because I didn't know that it was, that it was all right for me even out in mainstream, I think that's why God put me in those positions. I had to go over to a little town called Meeker, Colorado last fall to a conference, and literally they had the dung on their boots and they were coming in. I mean, these people like had 3 teeth in their head. I was scared. I took one friend with me, and I thought, well, God, we got to see where the rubber hits the road here, man. You got to be with me or not, And it went pretty good, and people came up and said, this big old cowboy swaggered up to me, and I thought, oh, dear God, I hope my friend Lisa sees me because she can get me out of here if it gets bad, And he said, I want to tell you, little lady, you opened my eyes tonight. I thought, thank you, God, my job was done. If I only touched that one man, my job was done. Because when I get up here, all I need to do is just try and be a channel. Because if there's one person in this room tonight that hears anything that helps them, I've done what I need to do. I'm supposed to give it away to keep it. One of the things I get really frustrated about is that in Al-Anon, I can only speak for the program of Al-Anon, but in Al-Anon, what I've noticed is a lot of people get a little relief from the disease, they get a little distance from it, and they get a little time, and they start feeling better, and they think they don't have to do service work, and they don't come around so much anymore. And this irritates the crap out of me, because what does it say here in the 12th step? Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. I have to give it away to keep it. If I get better, what good is it if I'm not turning around and helping somebody else come up behind me? If those people hadn't been there on the other end of the line when I was getting crazy and getting my brains batted out, who would have helped me? It's my job to come back and sit in a meeting when a newcomer is talking about how crazy and how obsessed they are and how they're on the phone at 4 o'clock in the morning, and for me to just sit there, and sometimes all the service I can do is just sit there and be a calm presence, and that may be all I need to do for that night. But they need to see, I think, that it does work and that people do come back and your life does get better. The Big Book tells me that I can be rocketed into the 4th dimension, and those are the levels on which I live my life today. I was doing 12-step service a couple months ago with a girl, and she was hurting bad, and this girl needed it. God, she needed it, but you know what? She didn't want it. This program is for people who want it, not for people who need it. Because if you don't want it, you're not going to stay. Because you're going to get here, it's going to get real, then it's going to get real different. That's been my experience. And it's hard for some people because we want it now. We want to get it fixed now. And I was sharing with her, and she was like, she couldn't believe some of the things that I had done before I started getting better. And I was talking about what I do today is maintenance. I go to 3 meetings a week. I'm sponsored. I sponsor people. I do service at meetings. I try to get out and do service any way that I can when people want it. She turned to me and she said, you have to go to 3 meetings a week? How long have you been there? I said, I'm in my 12th year. She said, why do you still go to 3 meetings a week? Why do you have to do that? I said, I don't have to do that. I get to do that. It's a gift. I get to do that. That's the attitude that I take about my recovery today, because if I'm not on fire about my recovery today, I might not be tomorrow. It's a daily reprieve based on my fit spiritual condition today. I take it to heart. I read the Big Book. Lack of power was our dilemma. We had to find a power greater than ourselves. What am I doing today to hook up with that power greater than me? Did I get up this morning? Did I write? Did I read? Did I meditate? Yes, I did. Did I do it yesterday? Yes, I did. I might not do it 7 days a week, but you can bet I do it 5 out of 7. He's not smoking yet, is he? I almost died from this thing. I got a life beyond my wildest dreams today. I was asked to go to that conference in Reno and speak. Minding my own business, I swear to God I was. I didn't even know, well, I noticed her, but, I didn't think, I want to, I thought, that's the person they said is going to be the Sunday morning speaker. Well, all my friends from San Jose came over to this conference, and my friends from Sacramento. One of the most beautiful blessings that I've got from this program is I know and love people all across this country today and have deep, meaningful friendships and relationships with them. And I mean deep. Not this surface stuff I used to have. We're talking deep stuff, and they're very important people to me. They all came over for the conference, and we're just having a big old love fest, we're hanging out and being there for the weekend. And the strangest thing happened. I was pitching and I was talking, and they were all laughing, and we were all cutting up and stuff. And I said, I'm single right now, but, the way my life is, I got up this morning and turned my will and my life over to the care of God and buckled my seatbelt. God could be changing that fact at any moment. Guess what? God was changing that fact. I got up the next day, and I went and I heard the closing speaker, and I thought, wow, she's pretty cute. And I'm about to get on the plane to go back home, and oh, she's from Phoenix, and they routed me through Phoenix. Isn't that interesting that they screwed up my plane ticket, so what should have been a 3-hour ride from Denver to Reno wound up being a 10-hour trip via Phoenix? Well, my higher power works in mysterious ways, folks, you know. So I'm thinking, oh, she's going back to Phoenix. Well, so I went up and talked to her, and after I told her the second time that she really needed to email me, I thought, Kerri, if you do it again, you're not going to look cool, girl. Just shut up, you know, walk away. We got to look cool, too. You alkies don't corner the market on that, okay? So I gave her my card, and I walked away, and I thought, all right, well, I don't know what's going on inside of me. Because I noticed through that meeting that I just kept thinking how cute she was. Now, mind you, women have not had this effect on me for a very long time, but I said, she's an alcoholic, you know? Of course I feel that way. Well, I love alcoholics. I do. You know, I have finally surrendered to that fact, and I am really okay with it. So it's time to go, and all my buddies from San Jose, we're getting our stuff together, and we're going to meet down in the hotel lobby. And I step off that elevator, and there she's standing. And I thought, oh, I'll go talk to her for a minute. I walk over there, and she swears this is what I said, but I don't think I did. Her name tag had come undone a little bit, the kind that clamp around like that. And she says I walked up to her just like that and says, let me fix you. Well, I don't think I did. She'll go to her grave claiming that's a story. I know she will. She's just that way. So we stood there and we talked for a couple minutes, and I said, you're going back to Phoenix, aren't you? And she said, yeah. And folks, I got to tell you, I had a spiritual experience in that moment because I connected on a God level with this person, and everything in that lobby just kind of melted back into the background. I don't know what happened. And I said, do you want to change your ticket to go, to get an earlier flight? Because I asked her, it was really funny how that went down, because she says I did that about her name tag. And I said, well, when's your flight? And she said, oh, it's such and such a time. And I said, oh, well, maybe you can change it and make it earlier, because I'm going to Phoenix. And she said, well, maybe I could. And I said, she said, well, I need a phone. And I said, well, here, use mine. And she said, well, I need their number. And I said, here, I have it. And these things were true. It was very serendipitous. I did not plan it. I had no idea this was going to happen. I had my bags with me. I was literally headed out the door to go to the airport. And she called and couldn't get on the plane, and I thought that was just as well. And my friend, there was a friend of mine from San Jose standing there, and I gave her the number, and he said, why don't you just dial the damn thing? I said, I will not. I draw the line there. Not going to call it for her. She said she liked him a little bit healthier than that, so, I've exhausted the lesbian population in Denver. I didn't say anything up there, Never occurred to me that God would take me clear from Denver to Reno to meet someone from Phoenix, and that sparks would fly, and it would be a spiritual connection, and we would hook up. But we did, we emailed, we talked on the phone. Our first phone date was like 5.5 hours. But I don't have addictive tendencies or anything. It was good. We talked a lot about God. At any rate, we did. We talk a lot about God all the time. It's beautiful because finally I'm attracting the level of people in my life that are where I'm at spiritually. And I know that I could never be with anyone who drank or used anymore, and that's the deal. That's the deal. And it always will be that way. I just can't live with that kind of insanity in my life, but I can't go back to those depths myself, and I won't. And that's okay, just like I won't ever be in an abusive relationship again. I'm going to start to wrap up here. But some of the things that I must have are a spiritual connection with my partner. And on a daily basis, we ask God into our individual lives and our lives together, and ask God to guide and to be present, and we will go to the wall a day at a time. There are no guarantees. I have no earthly conception how long it will be. I would love to say that it was forever, but I don't know. I'm a human being. But a day at a time, I can make a commitment. Just like a day at a time, I can make a commitment to my recovery. And that's what it's about. And it's about turning it over and letting it go and showing up for meetings, and my recovery being the most important thing in the whole wide world to me. It's a blessing to be with somebody who has their own recovery that's more important than anything else to them. That, to me, is what it's about. It's all about God now. That three-letter word that I couldn't even hear when I had flaps in my ears, too, that was shut off in the beginning when I first started going to meetings. And every time somebody said God, it conjured up this judgmental rule-making, hellfire and brimstone image that I had that like it totally turned me off. If you'd have told me 15 years ago that what I would look like today, I would have called you a liar. There was no way in the world I would think that I'd be doing what I'm doing today, feeling the way I'm feeling, standing up here in Miami, Florida with you beautiful people. Being healthy. Who the hell wanted to be healthy? I thought I'd be, this looked boring to me 15 years ago. It's not boring. It's called serenity. If you're new and you like that drama, I relate. I was addicted to drama when I got here. I wanted to be with a flashy, head-turning, I'll rock your world kind of alcoholic. Because I felt dead inside, but you could make me feel alive. And I wanted those ups and those downs. And I would tell you that I didn't like the drama. I would tell you that I didn't want to get battered. I would tell you that I hated standing in the middle of a huge intersection at 2 o'clock in the morning and having you rip my shirt off. But some part of me wanted it, or I wouldn't have done it, I couldn't help it. I thought I needed it. Well, it wasn't like I sat and thought, I need to go get battered. But part of my spirit was so dead and so decayed and so dying that I didn't know any better. And I was doing everything that I could do to get some sense of life. But I was going around it the wrong way. But I didn't have the tools. And you people have taught me the tools here. You laid a spiritual toolkit at my feet and said, you got to pick it up and use it. We'll walk with you every step of the way. But you got to do the deal, Kerri. And most days willing, often days not, I've done the deal a day at a time. Never done it perfectly. Don't in any way mean to stand up here and say that I've done this thing perfectly. I don't think that there's any way to do it perfectly. Being an Al-Anon, I suffer from perfectionism. Anybody out there have that problem? Wow. I try to learn, I'm perfect in my imperfection today. That's what I say. I've finally gotten okay with making mistakes. And it must be sinking into my consciousness because I have a boss he's all right if I make a mistake today. He doesn't throw me out. He doesn't yell at me. People actually behave this way in the world. Wow, what a concept, But the better I get, I notice what happens. It's like they say water seeks its own level. The better I get, the better energy I'm attracting to myself, in my life. Life is good today. I believe today on a cellular level that I am worthy of abundance and love. I didn't think that when I got here. I wanted to say something about the people if you're still addicted to drama. If you're in an unhealthy relationship, if you're not happy, if you think your life's not working, please don't leave. There's got to be somebody in some meeting somewhere that you're going to that can relate to your deal with what's going on to you. Please try and find someone to share it with. If you don't share it, it could kill you. It really could kill you. But you don't have to do it alone. The most important word to me in all the 12 steps is the very first word, we. You don't have to do it by yourself anymore. And if you're an Al-Anon, you may be suffering from that part of the disease that tells you that you have to do it by yourself and you can't tell anybody about it. You can tell somebody about it. You don't have to live in that kind of insanity anymore. There is a way out, the 12 steps. And there are people who will hold your hand while we trudge the road of happy destiny. I think in the 1930s dictionary, the definition of the word trudge meant to walk with purpose. I love that. Walk with purpose. That's what we do here today. We walk with purpose. If I can't do it today, somebody will carry me, and tomorrow I'll turn around and carry them. That's the beauty of this thing. But you got to give it a way to keep it. So the miracles will happen. Oh, God, I got to tell you one miracle before I stop. Y'all care? Too bad, I got the mic. At any rate, when I got out of that hospital, they told me that I had to pay $318 a month for the next 18 months. Did I say that? However you get it. They told me I had to pay a lot of money every month so that because my insurance wouldn't pick up the other part of it. Well, I was living way above my means, supporting this alcoholic and giving her all the... She wasn't asking for this stuff. I was just doing it, She did like it. I mean, she couldn't lie and tell you she didn't. There was no way I knew I was going to be able to pay that $318 a month. But when I checked myself in, she pulled me out in the hallway and she says, if you don't sign that paper, you're going to die. You're going to die. It ain't going to matter whether you have money or not. You're just going to die. So sign the damn paper and God will figure out a way to get that money for you. Well, I got out of the hospital and I paid the first 2 payments on that. I mean, calling my sponsor, crying all the time. I can't pay this bill, can't pay that bill. She's like, pay the bills that you can, pay the hospital, go to a meeting tonight, and call me in the morning and ask God for help. Hit your knees tonight and ask God for help. I'm like, screw God, man, how can this help me? I'll do what you're telling me to do. So 3rd month in, I write the check. A week and a half later, I go to the mailbox, and there's a letter from the hospital. It says, Miss Keller, mysteriously, it didn't say mysteriously, but it said the insurance has paid your balance in full, and here's the last check that we sent to you, that you sent to us. They paid my entire bill off. At that moment, that was the moment that I knew that there was some power greater than myself that was in my corner. I hit my knees and I cried. These kinds of miracles have happened for me in my recovery when I least expected it. These kinds of miracles happen when I've been doing the deal, folks. I'm not asking for the miracles. I'm just asking to get through the next 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Just, God, don't let my heart break from this pain. Or, God, please help me do the right thing. God, please, God, please, God, please, God. Show me the way, God. And I get all these gifts. And it's okay. It's okay with me today that I get the gifts. So if you're new and if you think you can't get the gifts, hang around long enough to prove to us that you can't. I guarantee you that you will if you just don't leave. Thanks.